On this week's episode of Straight to Why, I am joined by Samira Panah Bakhtiar, a fellow mom and a powerhouse in the technology and media industry. As General Manager of Media and Entertainment, Games, and Sports at Amazon Web Services, she has expertise spanning tech strategy, business development, and sales with a focus on content production, media supply chain, broadcast distribution, my gosh, you don't stop working, ad tech, streaming, monetization, innovation, and artificial intelligence. I actually cut all the awards you've received from my intro, or we were going to go on forever. Thank you so much for joining us today on Straight to Why to talk about all things media and tech related.
Well, I'm really delighted to be here, Amanda. Thank you for asking me to be here. I'd love to talk about this.
I like to start at the beginning.
Yeah.
I would love to know your why, your background, what's driven you to focus on media and technology.
It's an interesting and non-linear path. I'll start there. Right, yeah. And in high school, I wanted to go into politics. I went to college studying pre-law and finance. I took the LSATs. I was very much set on going to law school. And at the time, I was interning for Senator Dianne Feinstein in California. I realized it wasn't something that I wanted to do. I wanted to cultivate impact, but not in that way. So I had this moment in university where I wasn't quite sure what to do. And then someone from a company called Cisco Systems came in and talked at one of my econ courses. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. He sells switches and routers. Like, what is that?
I think he has any idea that he impacted your life.
He does. His name is Matt Freeman. Sadly, he passed away 10 years ago. But I have to tell you, he came in and spoke at Dr. Suzanne Cummins, if she tunes into this. She also had a major force in my career trajectory because she brought in very interesting people who arguably were ahead of their time to talk about what else was out there professionally. And I think by virtue of meeting him and her creating a platform for students to be able to hear about what was happening in tech, I took a chance and I went and I worked for a company called Cisco. They moved me to North Carolina and I lived there for a year amongst a cohort of 222 and 23-year-olds, fresh grads.
That has to have been fun.
It was a lot of fun. It was my first time in North Carolina. I lived in Raleigh, Durham, and it was an incredible experience because they taught us technical acumen and business acumen. And it also speaks to the great virtue that some of these large corporations like Cisco and Amazon, which we'll talk about in a minute, have really done relative to investing in younger talent and creating pathways for them to be able to reach their potential by bringing them on early in career and really investing in them. And so that's essentially what happened to me. So they created a cohort, technical trainings, business acumen, and then we were to exit interview and go find field placements. And I picked New York because I'm from California originally. I don't know if you know that. I was like, I want to go to Manhattan. I've always dreamt about living there and I loved Sex and the City and I had all of this influence from pop culture. And so I was like, I'm going to take the chance and come out to New York. And my first assignment was working with a company called Cablevision, which was at the time owned by the Dolan family, which owns Madison Square Garden and the New York Knicks. Go Knicks. But it was an incredible experience. They also owned a broadcast network at the time called Rainbow Media, which later became AMC Networks, which has a lot of really incredible niche and beloved content. They actually did Breaking Bad as an example. Really popular shows.
Favorite shows.
Exactly. So I had an opportunity to work with not only the Garden to understand what was happening relative to live sports and concerts and events, but be able to work with them across broadcast distribution for some of the most coveted content in the world. And then I also got a behind the scenes look at very non-glamorous element of the industry, which is cable and fiber and connectivity, all the things that we never think about that are so important for us to be able to take content like the one that we're shooting here today and be able to distribute it macroly. That was the early years of Samira. And then I joined Amazon in 2018.
Okay. I was going to say, when was the shift to Amazon?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it happened then. I'd spent about 12 years at Cisco. And in the middle of that, I also went and got my MBA and I also did a stint as a startup founder. And so I had all this different life experience that really shaped who I would ultimately become. But I think it always centered around this desire to want to build community and connectivity and to be able to engage. I feel like that's always been key themes of who I am. And so I think
we
it
so
naturally
share that in common.
We do.
Yeah.
I was talking about you earlier and I was like, for someone so accomplished as you, for you to spend time trying to build community around our school and bring people together, I think is just an incredible testament to you.
Oh, you're so sweet.
We definitely
Thank
share
you.
that.
This is not about me though. It's
I know, but yeah,
it was, you are.
Yeah, but I think that's the beauty of it is, are you a community builder and do you cherish storytelling, and can you use storytelling as a medium to be able to bring more diverse and different people together? And I think that rings true for you, it definitely rings true for me. And I think it's one of the reasons that I love being in this space so much. I'll tell you that after coming to Amazon, it just went so fast. It went from focusing on some of the core technology, which I'll talk to you a little bit about relative to how we could capture content and distribute that content on different types of mediums, whether you're watching on your computer or your phone or a television and all the tech behind that, to today, which has really been this convergence of all these different types of entertainment, whether it's social media or games or getting behind the scenes and fan experiences related to sports or just traditional streaming. All these things have come together. So my job has morphed, again, in a non-linear fashion, but I think it always comes down to these beats about being able to cultivate content quickly, be able to engage with people in a really meaningful way, and then helping the companies that we work with think through how they can monetize differently as well.
One of the things I love about that background is you didn't pick storytelling versus technology. You picked both.
That is such a great prompt. I was thinking about this recently. Early in my career, I was so tech heavy that whenever I wanted to talk about storytelling, I felt like a fish out of water. I felt like people were like, what is she talking about?
That's lane. Go back
exactly.
To your lane.
Go back to your lane.
Yeah.
And then I think more recently, especially being in creative conversations, when you try to introduce tech, it also felt very antithetical to what they were used to talking about.
Right.
But now we're in this position, and I think in large part buoyed by the advent of generative AI and AI becoming so ubiquitous in everybody's day-to-day use, that over the last 3 years, we really are at this intersection of tech and entertainment. And I think that it's a beautiful thing because I think there's so many beautiful things that are going to come from it as well.
I do too, and I'm really excited to click in on some of those beautiful things that are to come. One of the things that I've heard AWS described as is the invisible thread.
Yeah.
Okay. And so it's the invisible thread that powers entertainment. Not all of us know how many times we're actually touching AWS in a given day. Can you explain to us exactly how AWS plugs into the content ecosystem, for lack of a better term?
Absolutely. Let me give you a little bit of background on AWS, and then I can go into how we serve the entertainment industry. So AWS started in 2006, and when we launched with a single product called S3, our simple scalable storage product, and then quickly followed with a product called EC2, which is our elastic cloud computing product. And these two services, storage in the cloud and compute in the cloud, completely transformed an industry.
Transformed the world.
They truly have. When you think about the amount of infrastructure that's still on-prem and the ability for these workloads then to move to the cloud, to be buoyed off of the ability for companies and consumers to understand data more ubiquitously, you're talking about trillions of dollars worth of market potential. So to his credit, our corporate CEO, Andy Jassy, and at that time he was the CEO of AWS, he was able to look around a corner and realize that this was an emerging industry and that we could essentially invent an entirely new way to build and then scale and grow globally. AWS has come a long way. We're close to $130 billion annualized run rate at this point, and in our last earnings, we're growing at 28% year over year. These are really, really big numbers, and I think it really demonstrates the velocity of what's occurred. And as part of that, I will tell you that we index on choice. And so we launched those two products early on, but now if you look at our full portfolio, we have over 240 fully fledged services that do everything from data and storage and computing, but of course to artificial intelligence, either through the use of GPUs and CPUs, to the access to different model providers, to workloads that are focused on media and entertainment, which is where I come in.
Absolutely.
About 10 years ago, AWS bought a company called Elemental. And so that, I think, was the real first deliberate action into moving into this space.
And that was 2015?
That was 2015. So yeah, 11 years ago. The company has been an incredible way for us to deepen our relationship with broadcasters and streamers and entertainment brands globally. They had a set of services that were focused on encoding and transcoding content, converting content into different formats so it could be distributed.
What does that mean, transcoding? What does that mean?
Yeah, it's a good question. So right now we've got cameras that are on us. That content, the visual imagery, the sound that's coming in through these microphones, those have to be ingested somewhere. And then they have to be converted, right? And then subsequently passed on to a different service to be able to ensure that this content can go to your editors, an example, in post-production, to make sure that we sound correctly, or if there's going to be graphical overlays that you want to add to the content, that they could be added in seamlessly. And then after that content is created and you're satisfied with the post-production and you're ready to distribute it onto Apple Podcasts or onto Spotify. We have to make sure that content can come in with the right level of resolution without us being pixelated or the sound feeling weird or there being issues with lip sync.
Which, by the way, is a real issue.
It's a real
when you
issue.
Produce content.
100%. But when done right, the viewer can just sit back and listen to us and watch us and get lost in the storytelling without having to worry about things not looking right or sounding right. And so I think that's what the technology does. The technology allows for us to be able to shoot content with us here in New York City and Midtown and be able to get it out across all these different platforms seamlessly and very rapidly. And our acquisition of AWS Elemental helped us take this infrastructure that was historically only done on-prem, meaning there would be a server room right next to us and we'd have to do this all here, and take it up to the cloud so that you're able to focus on what you want to focus on, which is the storytelling, not the management of undifferentiated heavy lifting.
Correct.
So that was, I think, the big boom for us. And after we acquired AWS Elemental, we also launched a series of game-specific services, GameLift servers, GameLift streams. These help with companies like Electronic Arts and Roblox and Epic, who distribute games that are loved by our sons, right?
Unfortunately, the Roblox one, yes.
I want to be able to distribute them, be able to do those with ease as well. So the parallel exists across all different types of entertainment.
How many users do you think AWS touches?
Millions and millions monthly.
In a month, and millions.
We have millions of active users daily, monthly. Yeah.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Exactly. And we're also all over the planet. We have well over 150,000 partners that build on us, and those partner services are made available across countries around the world. We have over 38 what we call regions around the world. A region is a collection of availability zones and data centers within those availability zones. So as an example, we launched recently a new region in Saudi Arabia because that's a booming market for cloud utilization across global financial services, across media and entertainment, across healthcare and life sciences. All of these industries are now wanting to expand globally outside of the United States specifically. It's been really remarkable to see how AWS has been able to keep up with that demand across all the industries all over the world.
Well, as an outsider, it's remarkable. I don't know when you sleep. And I'm always in shock and awe of how AWS has grown and expanded in a relatively short amount of time.
It feels like a rocket ship, and every day I feel so privileged to be a part of this company. We have a very clear mission, and we also have these leadership principles. We have 16 leadership principles that really govern the way that we all operate internally as owners and builders. And so we're constantly focused on things like being able to deliver results for our customers. One of our leadership principles is really focused on customer obsession. We're very much focused on being able to have very high standards in the ways in which we engage. And one thing that really is personal to me is this desire to understand that with great success and scale comes broad responsibility, which is one of our leadership principles as well. And I really lean into that personally, and I know our company obviously does as well. And I think this is a really incredible moment where we can start to continue to help really bring global businesses up with us through the use of the technology and the great democratization that I think the cloud can have relative to creating a more level playing field where a lot of people who historically wouldn't have been able to, in this case, storytell or build businesses now have access to services that will allow them to do so. And I think that's been just an incredible thing to be able to watch personally.
I do too. And I think it's probably all the more important in a world where AI is becoming more and more prevalent. Mm-hmm. And I mean that in the following sense. I have a sneaking suspicion that legitimate content that involves individuals who are authentic and relatable is going to go much further in the future.
100%.
And so you guys are building the backbone to be able to do that.
Yeah. So I think coming back to my job as the GM of media, entertainment, games, and sports, there's a few things that ring true relative to all the entertainment customers I work with around the world. And whether those are studios and streamers or music brands or sports leagues
teams,
or game developers and game distributors or global betting and gaming organizations. We work really closely with FanDuel as an example or Flutter. There's a lot of nuance in what all of these entertainment companies do, but at the end of the day, they're really all focused on three things. How can I create higher fidelity content at a lower price point? Faster, right? In order to be able to keep up. Secondarily, how can I distribute that across a multitude of different platforms and be able to monetize against that in a very timely way. And then finally, how can I really double click on engagement? And I think that's the most important part now, that it's not just about acquiring a listener or a subscriber. It's really how you can deepen your relationship
100%.
with that individual. Some of the most successful brands that I've seen really build on AWS have been focused less on creating a story or creating a show and streaming it on us, and really building a business.
Right.
And I think that business attribute means showing up in different ways at different times. It could include cultivating merchandise. It could include getting to know your consumers a bit better so that you're targeting advertisements to them in more novel ways. There's a lot of ands that can come from that. So it's been really interesting relative to how we've seen the use of technology be used across content creation, multi-platform distribution, and engagement and monetization at scale.
Well, doing this now, having a podcast, has brought me directly into your sphere.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, is this landing? With you? Yeah.
100%.
As a creative?
100%. Because these are all issues that we think about when we put out the podcast. We care about monetization. We care about distribution. We care about reach. And we really care about repeat customers.
Yeah.
That fundamentally is what drives the story.
I love that. Going back to the story, I wanted to come back to a question you asked, which was how ubiquitous is this invisible thread? And I had a reporter once ask me, AWS is like oxygen. I don't think we would be able to survive without it. And I wouldn't go as far as to say that.
I don't know that the reporter's wrong.
There's got to be a level of humility there that we maintain, but it was interesting.
You might be too big to fail.
I think this notion of being an invisible backbone, an invisible thread, something that you don't see that's just there and just works, is super important, because we don't want to have main character energy. We want you to have that. We just want to be there behind the scenes in order to be able to just make sure that you know that it's going to work. And then when you're ready to have it scale, it can move to that next region of the world seamlessly, and that you can continue to grow. I think that's one important point. The second point I would say is that there are billions of people who are receiving their streaming content today through the use of AWS services. Anytime you power up Disney Plus or Peacock or Prime Video or Netflix, or you launch a game on Sony PlayStation, or you are playing Roblox, you are interfacing with products that have been built on this really incredible stack of AWS services. We are very proud to be the world's largest and most broadly adopted cloud. And me specifically, I'm very proud to lead the team that's so customer obsessed about the entertainment industry and really focus on how we can continue to deliver the use cases that are going to matter most in this moment, which I think is a good segue into what's coming next, which is what served the entertainment industry historically is not going to serve them going forward, and they have to be able to change.
And we should talk about that because, again, as a new creator, I see so much new information. I had no idea about microdramas 3 months ago.
Totally.
And all of a sudden,
they're everywhere. Yeah.
And it's the number one focus. I didn't know what the clipping business was. I had no idea. There's so much that you learn as you sort of move into the sphere. But now everyone is talking about verticals. They're talking about microdramas, micro series of any kind. Can you explain to us where you think your clients are headed from that perspective?
Yeah, 100%. First off, it comes down to very rapidly changing trends in the way that content is being consumed by younger and younger demographics. So I think if you look at Gen Z as an example, 88% of them right now are viewing content primarily on their mobile phones. I think 90% of them are watching video on mobile devices. And I'll give you an example of Fox Sports is a customer we work with really closely and helped us actually invent a new product that we have launched called AWS Elemental Inference, a good example of us working backwards from our customers. But they were noticing for Fox Sports content, 90% of their viewers were consuming the content on mobile devices. Yeah. Forget about the generational differences, just straight up 90%.
That's
almost
a
all.
huge percentage.
Right? So I think when they realize that all this content that they're capturing and that they paid millions, billions of dollars for the sports rights is being captured in landscape format.
And it needs to be
vertical. I think that's like, my mom was like, what is this vert thing? I'm like, it just literally means watching content on your phone the way that you would normally hold your phone.
Someone had to explain it to me once too. So I understand.
It sounds fancier than it is. But the problem statement, it sounds so basic. You're shooting content that's meant to be aired on a television, and that's typically in landscape format. And now all of these people are watching it on their phones. And they're either watching it on the streaming service that you built that's available on your phone, or they're rewatching it on Instagram or on YouTube Shorts or on TikTok Reels. Many of our customers realize that they need to be able to own the entire value chain associated to how they engage with these end consumers. So we launched this new service called AWS Elemental Inference, which essentially can act like AI cheat code for a broadcaster who's capturing that content. Many of them have already built the services on AWS Elemental. It's already in their workflows and their work streams. And all they had to do was like turn it on in the console.
And what does the inference do?
It basically will take the content that's being shot in landscape and create a vertical stream of that.
Oh, wow.
With only 6 to 10 seconds of latency. So it'll create a parallel stream and there's no intervention that's required. There's no net new setup. They just have to turn it on, and then you have that vertical feed.
Okay, I have so much footage that I could use if I leverage that service.
You definitely could. So imagine if this was live right now and you wanted it to be able to be seen on a desktop, but then also on mobile simultaneously. That would be a great example. Now, this is being shot and it's going to go into post-production and then it's going to be posted later. So we would call that a VOD, or video on demand.
Yeah.
And so in that case, we can also use content that's non-live and then create clips. You may want to say, okay, with Samira and I were talking, what clip in this segment would have the highest propensity for virality? Where was Samira the most dynamic, or what statement did she make that we feel is going to get the most engagement, right? And we can use AI to be able to really understand the context of our conversation. It'll understand my hand gestures. It'll pick up on voice inflection. So it's picking up on all the things that a human editor would have to watch for.
Waiting for and looking for.
Exactly.
Right.
But it's able to really pick up on that intelligently through the use of AWS's AI services. And then it could cultivate a series of clips for you that you could then post onto Instagram Reels, as an example, in order to act as a prompt for someone to come and watch the content on one of Meta's platforms, or go out to YouTube, as an example, to be able to watch this later.
Well, it's funny you're saying this, because what we find in doing podcasting, and we've had this conversation with Meta and others, YouTube Shorts, a lot of the content is simply being consumed in the short form, 90-second or less, vertical space.
You got it.
A lot of people don't go back to listen to the podcast. Now, there are some loyal, long-form podcast listeners.
Right.
But they're not the majority of the people who are consuming the content.
No, they're not. Not at all. So I think that's why being able to serve up both is incredibly important, which is why I made that point beforehand, that it's not about just acquiring new subscribers. It's how can you meet the same person across multiple different mediums, and then engage with them differently. Sometimes to be able to delight them or pique their curiosity, other times to get them to take a specific action, to purchase something. And then I think that's where it gets really interesting as companies start to really think about how they can extend their IP into new forums and cultivate and build new businesses.
Samira, thank you so much for spending time with us on Straight to Why. This concludes the first part of our 2-part series.